What would you do if a routine traffic stop turned into a life sentence without a conviction, without a trial, and without anyone listening? She was a doctor, a mother, a citizen. But to them, she was just another body to process, another name to bury in the system. Until the day she made one phone call to a brother the sheriff never should have crossed. The fluorescent lights of the Evergo gas mart flickered against the windshield of Dr. Simone Hayes' weathered Toyota Camry as she pulled into the last available pump. The dashboard clock glowed 11:42 p.m. Her scrubs still smelled faintly of antiseptic from St. Agnes Medical Center, where she had just finished a grueling double shift in the ICU. In the back seat, her 13-year-old son Jordan yawned and stretched. "Mom, can I grab something from inside? I'm starving." Simone smiled tiredly at him through the rearview mirror. "Just something small, okay? We still have to get home." Jordan nodded, slipping out of the car with the awkward limbs of adolescence, his oversized hoodie and basketball shoes making him look younger than he sounded. Simone stepped out into the crisp night air, stretching her back as she reached for the gas nozzle. She barely noticed the police cruiser pulling in behind her until the high beams lit up her vehicle like a stage light. Her breath caught. Simone was a black woman alone at a gas station near midnight in Ravenwood County, where those three facts didn't need to be spoken aloud to be understood. She had lived long enough, practiced medicine long enough, and raised a child long enough to know being black in the wrong place at the wrong time could change everything. Two white deputies stepped out of the cruiser. The taller one, broad-shouldered, buzz-cut, nameplate-reading sergeant. Raymond Tate walked with a swagger that didn't match the calm of the night. The shorter one, Officer Luke Brenner, circled behind her car, flashlight already in hand. "Evening, ma'am," Tate said smoothly, though his tone held a practiced authority. "This your vehicle?" Simone kept her voice even. "Yes, officer. Is there a problem?" Brenner's flashlight swept across the dented rear bumper, pausing on the faded paint. "Matches the description of a stolen vehicle reported earlier tonight." Simone blinked. "I've owned this car for 6 years. I have all the documentation." "I'll need to see your license, registration, and proof of ownership," Tate said, already inching closer, hand brushing his holster. "It's in my purse, inside the car," Simone said cautiously. "May I reach for it?" Tate gave a slow, deliberate nod. As Simone leaned inside, she saw Jordan returning from the store, chips and a soda in hand. He stopped short, his expression shifting the moment he saw the cruiser. "Mom," he called, voice suddenly shaky. "It's okay, baby," Simone said, trying to keep her voice steady. "They just want to see some paperwork." But the tremble betrayed her. Brenner turned sharply toward Jordan. "Stay right where you are, kid." Simone retrieved her wallet, her hands visibly shaking. "Here's everything," she said, handing over her ID and registration. Tate barely glanced at the documents before passing them to Brenner. "Could be fake." "What?" Simone's voice cracked. "They're real." "Step away from the vehicle," Tate ordered, tone no longer polite. Jordan dropped his snacks. His phone was in his hand before anyone could stop him, the screen lighting up as he opened the camera. "Hey!" Brenner barked, striding toward him. "What do you think you're doing?" Jordan's voice cracked. "It's my right." Brenner snatched the phone and slammed it to the pavement, crushing it under his boot. "Not tonight, it's not." Simone instinctively stepped forward. "Leave him alone, he's just a child." Tate grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. "I said step away." "You're hurting me," she gasped. "You people never learn, do you?" he sneered. Behind her, Jordan stood frozen, his eyes wide, hands trembling, silent tears sliding down his cheeks. And somewhere deep inside Simone Hayes, the pain of the cuffs tightened against a deeper fear, not for herself, but for her son. The ride to the Ravenwood County Sheriff's Department was short, but every second felt like a descent into something Simone couldn't name, something deeper than injustice. Her wrists throbbed in the cuffs. Her thoughts churned between disbelief and rising panic. She twisted in the back seat, craning to see Jordan through the rear window, still standing alone under the gas station lights, shoulders shaking. "Where's my son?" she demanded, voice hoarse with fear. Officer Brenner didn't answer. Tate chuckled in the front seat. "Don't worry, Child Services will scoop him up. That's what happens when junkies get arrested." "I'm not a junkie," Simone said, jaw tight. "I'm a physician. I work at St. Agnes." "You people always have a title," Tate muttered. "Doesn't change what's underneath." The cruiser veered sharply into a gated side entrance of the precinct, bypassing the public lobby. Simone's stomach tightened. No one saw them arrive. No one would ask why. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed cold and unwelcoming. The air smelled of bleach, sweat, and despair. Brenner yanked open the door and dragged her out. Simone stumbled, catching herself before she hit the concrete. Around her, the place pulsed with a worn routine, officers laughing at desks, paperwork shuffled like ritual, but no one looked her in the eye. No one asked a question. At the booking desk, a heavy-set female officer glanced up just long enough to bark, "Name." "Dr. Simone Hayes," she said, trying to inject calm into her voice. "There's been a mistake. She was picked up stealing a vehicle, resisted arrest," Tate interrupted flatly. "And her son interfered." "That's not true," Simone began. "And we found this," Brenner added, dropping a small Ziploc bag of white powder on the desk like a cherry on a sundae. Simone's heart dropped. "That's not mine. You planted that." "Of course she says that," Tate said, smirking. The booking officer sighed, already typing. "Add narcotics possession." "I want a lawyer," Simone said firmly, "and I want to call someone." Tate leaned in close, his voice a low growl. "You'll get your phone call when Sheriff Briggs says you can. Until then, keep your mouth shut, doctor." She was fingerprinted, photographed, and led down a long hallway toward the holding cells. They passed doors she didn't want to imagine the purpose of, some open, revealing cold steel benches, no windows, only concrete and shadows. They stopped at a cramped cell already filled with women. Simone was shoved inside without a word. The door clanged shut behind her. A few women looked up. Most didn't. One, older, with tired eyes and a fading bruise on her cheekbone, whispered, "First time?" Simone nodded slowly. "I shouldn't be here. They planted drugs on me." The woman didn't look surprised. "Ravenwood Special. Welcome to the machine." Simone backed into a corner, her body still buzzing with the shock of it all. Her hands still smelled like latex gloves and hospital soap, evidence of a life that now seemed unreachable. Her mind raced to Jordan. She had no idea where he was, or if he was safe. That fear, more than the cuffs, more than the charge, settled like a stone in her chest. Somewhere down the hallway, a door slammed. A voice barked orders. Laughter followed. This place didn't feel like law and order. It felt like something older, something practiced. And Simone was its latest target. The holding cell wasn't built for comfort or humanity. A single steel bench ran along one wall. A toilet, half hidden by a waist-high partition, sat in the corner. There was no clock, no window, and no sense of time. Just the smell of sweat, fear, and metal. Simone stood at first, her back pressed against the wall. The cuffs had been removed, but her wrists still ached, red and raw. Around her, 15 women filled a space made for half that number. Most were either black or Latina, their faces marked by fatigue, bruises, or the kind of resignation that settles in after too many broken promises. The woman who had spoken earlier, a quiet strength in her tired eyes, gestured to an empty spot on the bench. "Sit. You'll be here a while." Simone hesitated, then moved slowly toward the seat. Her body ached, but her mind raced faster. "I'm Simone Hayes," she said softly. "I'm a physician. I was arrested at a gas station. They said my car was stolen, and they planted drugs on me." The woman nodded without surprise. "Name's Tasha. Been in here 17 days. Mine was a broken taillight. Turned into a warrant for unpaid tickets I never got. Then resisting arrest, then drug possession. Classic Ravenwood." Another woman, younger, curled up in the corner, added, "They told me I could go home if I signed a paper. Turns out I pled guilty to a felony." A third muttered, "You learn quick. Don't trust the uniforms. Don't trust the paperwork. And never, ever think the truth matters." Simone looked around. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. And the pattern had a name. Sheriff Walter Briggs. She swallowed hard. "They told me my son was taken by child services." Tasha's face softened. "You got people on the outside?" "A neighbor. Maybe. But I haven't had a chance to call anyone yet." "You will, eventually. Once they're done softening you up." The hours dragged. Women rotated on and off the bench, some lying on the floor to rest. Simone sat rigid, arms crossed, trying to focus, but her thoughts kept returning to Jordan. Was he scared? Alone? Did he even know where she was? The cell door finally creaked open around what felt like dawn. A man in a wrinkled suit and crooked tie stepped in. "Hayes? Dr. Simone Hayes?" She stood. "That's me." "Kevin Dwyer, public defender. Come with me." She followed him to a cramped interview room. A single table, 2 chairs, a flickering light overhead. "I didn't request a public defender," Simone said calmly. "I want to call my own attorney." Dwyer sighed, opening a manila folder. "Look, you're in a tough spot. Car theft, resisting arrest, drug possession. They're offering a plea deal, 6 months, disorderly conduct, out in 3 if you're lucky. I didn't do any of it. Doesn't matter. What matters is what they can say you did. They have reports, evidence, officer statements. You think a judge here is going to believe you over Sheriff Briggs' people?" Simone narrowed her eyes. "Are you even going to try to defend me?" He hesitated. "This isn't personal, Dr. Hayes. It's Ravenwood. This town runs on pressure and plea bargains. My job is to get you the best deal, not chase windmills." "Then you're not doing your job," she replied evenly, "because I'm not signing a single word." Dwyer gathered his papers. "Suit yourself. But I've seen what happens to people who don't play ball, especially black women who think their education will protect them." He left her in the room alone. Simone sat motionless for several seconds. She knew now. The charges were never meant to stick. They were meant to silence. And she was done being silent. The holding cell door clanged open, jolting Simone from her restless half-sleep. A young female officer stood outside, clipboard in hand. "Hayes, phone call, 5 minutes." Simone stood slowly. Her joints ached from the cold concrete. Around her, the women barely stirred. They had learned not to ask questions. But Tasha, the woman who had taken her in like a guide to survival, caught her eye. "Use it wisely," she whispered. "1 call means 1 shot." Simone nodded. They led her down a narrow hallway to a row of payphones mounted on a cinder-block wall, each with a plastic divider meant to offer privacy but really offering none. The officer didn't bother pretending to step away. Simone picked up the handset with steady hands. She didn't dial her lawyer. She didn't call a friend. She entered a secure number, one she hadn't used in years, one she'd been told never to use unless everything else had failed. The line rang, once, twice, 3 times, then a voice, calm, measured. "This is Colonel Hayes." Simone's throat caught. It had been nearly 2 years since she'd heard her brother's voice in real time, always somewhere classified, always with a delay, always distant. "Nathan, it's me." For a moment, there was only silence. Then his voice changed, sharpened, focused. "Simone, are you safe?" She swallowed hard. "No. I'm in custody in Ravenwood County. I was arrested falsely. They planted drugs. They took Jordan. I think they're building something against me. Sheriff Walter Briggs. Say no more." His voice dropped half an octave. "I'm coming." That was all. No panic, no promises, just certainty. Simone's breath hitched. Her fingers tightened around the handset. The weight of isolation, fear, and helplessness didn't vanish, but it shifted. She wasn't alone anymore. "I didn't know who else to call," she whispered. "You called the right person," he replied. "Listen carefully. From this point forward, you resist nothing. Say nothing. Sign nothing. You hear me?" "Yes." "I need 24 hours, he said. "Maybe less. Until then, do exactly what they ask and nothing more. I'll handle the rest." A pause. "I promise." The line disconnected. Simone remained holding the receiver against her ear for several seconds, the dial tone humming like a pulse in her hand. Then she hung it up and turned around. Sheriff Walter Briggs was standing 10 feet away. His eyes narrowed the moment their gazes met. He hadn't heard the conversation, but he saw the difference. There was something in Simone's face now that hadn't been there before. Not defiance, conviction. "Productive call?" he asked, voice coated in mock politeness. Simone met his gaze, unflinching. "Just letting someone know where I am." Briggs studied her, trying to read what had changed. She gave him nothing. No clues, no fear. That, more than any threat, unsettled him. "Take her back," he muttered to the guard. As Simone walked the corridor back to the cell, something shifted in the air. It wasn't safety, not yet. But it was coming, because Nathan Hayes wasn't just her brother. He was a Delta Force commander, and Ravenwood had just made a mistake. It wouldn't survive. Sheriff Walter Briggs stood at the second-floor window of the Ravenwood County Sheriff's Department, watching rain gather in thin streaks on the glass. Below, squad cars idled in formation. Officers milled about in practiced routine, but something had shifted. Something was off. He couldn't name it, not yet. But he had felt the change the moment Simone Hayes looked him in the eye after that phone call. There was no fear, just quiet control, like she knew something he didn't. "Who did she call?" he asked the deputy beside him. "No idea, Sheriff. Untraceable line, secure prefix, might have been military." Briggs turned slowly. "Military?" The deputy nodded. "Her intake form says she's got a brother in the service, colonel or something." Briggs muttered a curse under his breath. He'd built his empire in Ravenwood over 15 years, not through brute force, but quiet fear. Strategic silence. People didn't question authority here, especially not black women. Until now. Downstairs, the front doors of the precinct burst open. Mrs. Evelyn Carter stormed in, trench coat soaked, umbrella dripping in one hand, and a stack of paperwork in the other. She didn't wait to be greeted. "I'm here about Jordan Hayes." The desk sergeant blinked, clearly unprepared. "Ma'am, I'm not sure." "I have temporary guardianship papers signed by his mother," Evelyn interrupted. "You left a 13-year-old boy alone at a gas station in the middle of the night. That's not just immoral, it's criminal." The sergeant opened his mouth again, but Evelyn didn't give him the chance. "And if I don't see him in the next 2 minutes, I'll be calling the State Attorney General's office, Channel 7 News, and the NAACP in that order." By the time Sheriff Briggs reached the lobby, Evelyn was already seated beside Jordan, one hand protectively on his shoulder, the other dialing her phone with frightening calm. "Miss Carter," he said through gritted teeth, "this isn't your concern." "It became my concern," she said coolly, "the moment you tried to erase that boy's mother." Jordan looked up, eyes red but steady. "Is my mom okay?" he asked Briggs directly. The sheriff didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence told them everything. Back upstairs, Briggs slammed the door to his office. 2 deputies followed behind him. "We need to move her." "Where?" "There's a holding facility upstate, old transport depot. Quiet, no oversight." "You want to transfer her without due process?" Briggs turned sharply. "I want her off the radar." He paused, thinking about the phone call. "She's no longer just a nurse in the wrong place at the wrong time. Someone powerful's watching now. I can feel it." His men nodded. Orders were orders. An hour later, Simone was pulled from her cell. She said nothing, but she noticed the difference. No booking paperwork, no phone calls, no explanation, just 2 new deputies, no name tags. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice calm. "Processing," one replied flatly. But they weren't heading to processing. They were heading out a side exit, toward an unmarked van. Back in the precinct, Evelyn Carter stood by the front window, watching the same van disappear into the wet, gray distance. She turned to Jordan, her voice low but steady. "Something's happening," she said. "Something big." And for the first time, Jordan smiled just barely. "Uncle Nathan is coming," he whispered. At a private military airfield just outside Quantico, the wheels of a transport jet screeched against the tarmac at 03:12 a.m. The ramp lowered slowly. The night was cold, windless, unnervingly quiet. Colonel Nathan Hayes stepped onto American soil with a single duffel, eyes sharp despite 18 hours of classified redeployment. His movements were smooth, deliberate, every step already part of a mission that had begun the moment he picked up Simone's call. He didn't stop to greet the driver. He didn't go home. He went straight to work. By sunrise, Nathan was in a secure conference room at an undisclosed facility outside Richmond, seated at a long metal table with 4 people who each knew how to dismantle systems from the inside out. Carter Reed, a former CIA intelligence analyst turned civilian contractor, projected a digital map of Ravenwood County onto the screen. Sheriff Walter Briggs, 15 years in power, 6 contested elections, no term limits, public approval inflated by media manipulation. But the real power, he tapped the screen, comes from silence. Nathan folded his arms. "Talk to me about structure." Lisa Nguyen, a cybersecurity expert and surveillance engineer, began pulling files onto her tablet. "Briggs runs a closed precinct. Internal databases scrubbed weekly. Body cams malfunction more often than not. Complaints disappear. Evidence logs are edited retroactively." "Political ties?" Nathan asked. "Plenty," said Marcus Green, a forensic accountant and longtime associate of Nathan's from previous missions. He's connected to Judge Alton Pierce and State Senator Whitaker, both of whom have repeatedly blocked oversight efforts, and he lives way above his salary. We've traced funds, shell companies, real estate, offshore accounts. "Drug trafficking?" Nathan pressed. "Suspected," Marcus nodded. "We're still digging." But early indicators link seized evidence leaks back to I-81 transport corridors. Carter leaned forward. "Colonel, what do you want to do with this?" Nathan's voice was low, deliberate. "We run a two-phase operation. Phase 1, extract Simone and Jordan safely. Phase 2, crack open the entire Briggs machine publicly, thoroughly, and permanently." He paused. "No media stunts, no grandstanding. We move with precision, like every other target we've neutralized." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Even if the target's wearing a badge instead of a uniform?" Nathan looked her dead in the eye. "A uniform doesn't mean you serve. It just means people assume you do." Silence settled over the room. Then Marcus spoke, voice level. "We're with you. Just say when." Nathan nodded. "We begin tonight." He turned back to the map, his eyes scanning the topography of Ravenwood County the way he had once scanned maps of Kandahar and Raqqa, looking for choke points, leverage, patterns of control. The terrain was different, but the mission was the same. Find the target, rescue the innocent, dismantle the power behind the violence. Only this time the battlefield wasn't in a foreign land. It was home. The van moved fast, tires humming over rural asphalt like a needle dragging across vinyl. Simone sat in the back, wrists cuffed, flanked by two silent deputies with no name tags. The windows were blacked out. There was no paperwork, no conversation. Just a creeping dread that this trip had nothing to do with processing. She leaned slightly, watching the road signs shift from county markers to uncharted backroads. "Where are we going?" she asked again, more firmly. No one answered. But someone else had. 20 miles ahead, tucked off a service road beneath the shadow of a ridge, Colonel Nathan Hayes lay prone behind a fallen log, eyes locked on the thermal feed streaming through his scope. "They're approaching the kill zone," said Lisa Nguyen, her voice coming through his earpiece from a surveillance van nearby. "Visual confirmed," Carter Reed added. "Unmarked transport van, 2 escorts, pattern matches Mercer's off-the-books protocol." Nathan didn't speak. He didn't need to. With one clipped hand signal, his 2-man team adjusted positions along the hillside. Moments later, the van rounded the bend and met a roadblock. An unmarked black SUV sat diagonally across the road. Its driver stepped out slowly, flashing a federal badge. Special Agent James Whitman, FBI. "Turn off the engine and step out," he called out calmly. The deputies stiffened. "On whose authority?" one snapped, reaching for his sidearm. Nathan moved before the man touched leather. He appeared out of the tree line like a phantom, weapon trained and steady. "On mine." The other deputy froze. "Colonel Nathan Hayes," Whitman added, "Delta Force. You're outclassed, outnumbered, and about to commit a federal offense if you don't open that door." It was over in seconds. Simone stumbled out, blinking against the sunlight, her breath catching when she saw him. "Nathan." He didn't rush to her. He just stepped forward, unlocked the cuffs, and looked her in the eye. "You okay?" She nodded. Tears pooled, but she didn't let them fall. "Jordan?" she asked, voice breaking. "Safe," he said, "with Evelyn." Only then did she collapse into his arms. Back in Ravenwood, panic was beginning to take root. Sheriff Walter Briggs stood in his office, a shattered coffee mug on the floor beside his boots. His phone buzzed with updates: Simone extracted, transport intercepted, FBI involvement confirmed. "They've overstepped," he growled. "No one moves on my prisoners without going through me." His deputy hesitated. "They had federal clearance, Sheriff." "Then we escalate." He opened a locked drawer and pulled out a burner phone, a number memorized, no caller ID, one ring, then a voice. "You need something cleaned up, Sheriff?" Briggs' voice was tight. "I need it silenced, fast, and permanent." There was a pause on the line. "That'll cost extra." "Money's not the problem. Time is." Briggs ended the call and turned to his remaining loyal men. "Get ready. We're not playing defense anymore." That night, under the pale glow of a secure safe house on the outskirts of Ravenwood, Simone sat in a clean sweatshirt, her son curled against her side, asleep at last. Nathan stood at the window, scanning the dark tree line. "Do you really think he'll retaliate?" she asked quietly. "He already has," Nathan said. "And next time, he won't send deputies." Simone looked down at Jordan, then back at her brother. "So what now?" Nathan didn't answer right away. He glanced at the clock. His mind was already 3 moves ahead. "Now," he said finally, "we show him what happens when power meets purpose." It happened just before dawn. The safe house, nestled behind a grove of pines on the outskirts of Ravenwood, had been quiet all night. Jordan had finally fallen into a deep sleep, his hand still wrapped around his mother's, while Simone sat reading a paperback in the dim kitchen light. Nathan had stepped out briefly to join Carter and Lisa, who were coordinating surveillance routes for the next phase of their operation. That's when the glass shattered. Two men in tactical gear burst through the back window with surgical efficiency masks on, weapons drawn. A third came through the front, silent and fast. Simone barely had time to scream before a taser hit her. Jordan lunged toward the hallway, but one of the intruders grabbed him mid-stride, slamming him against the wall. "Easy, kid. You're just leverage." Simone's body convulsed as electricity flooded her system, then fell limp to the floor. Within 90 seconds, they were gone. By 6:18 a.m., Nathan was standing in the center of the now ransacked safe house, jaw clenched, eyes cold. He held up a blood-smeared paper Jordan had scribbled on hours earlier, his math homework. "They were in and out in under 2 minutes, Carter reported. "Entry points suggest military training. Door cams jammed before breach. These weren't cops. They were hired," Lisa added grimly. "Phoenix Tactical, private security group run by Eric Donovan, disgraced Army Ranger, dishonorably discharged. They've worked black contracts for regimes we don't name in official briefings." Nathan's voice dropped. "And now they're on Sheriff Briggs' payroll." "We've tracked 2 possible locations on the outskirts," Marcus chimed in. "One's a decommissioned warehouse off Sawmill Road. Utilities spiked at 4:30 a.m. Something's active." Nathan turned, already moving. "We go now. No backup. No delays." The sun had barely cleared the tree line when Nathan, Carter, and 2 tactical specialists approached the warehouse perimeter. Drones provided overhead visuals. Lisa's voice guided them via comms. "Heat signatures inside, 6. 2 small, unmoving, likely Simone and Jordan. 4 are on the move, patrolling," Nathan signaled. The team breached at 7:03 a.m., entering silently through a maintenance door. Carter peeled left, taking down the first sentry with a non-lethal strike. Another turned. Too late, Nathan's fist dropped him instantly. They moved through corridors like smoke, silent, calculated, fast. In the center of the warehouse, Simone and Jordan were bound to chairs beneath an overhead lamp, bruised but conscious. One of the mercenaries raised his weapon as they approached. Nathan fired first. The man dropped. "Simone," he called, cutting her restraints. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, pulling Jordan into her arms. "We're okay, just get us out." Gunfire erupted from above. Donovan and 2 men fired down from a steel catwalk covering Sheriff Briggs, who was making a run for a back exit. Nathan's eyes locked on him. "Carter, extraction," he ordered. "I'm going up." He climbed the side stairwell with methodical force, dodging gunfire and returning calculated bursts. 1 merc fell, then the second. At the top, Briggs reached the emergency exit but found it blocked by Agent James Whitman and a federal team, their weapons trained and their badges out. "Drop it, Sheriff." Briggs turned, desperate, cornered, and found himself face to face with Nathan. "This was never going to end your way," Nathan said coldly. Briggs raised his weapon in one last act of defiance. Nathan fired once. The sheriff collapsed to the steel floor, groaning in pain, his weapon skidding across the metal. He wasn't dead, but he was finished. Outside, as medics checked Simone and Jordan, Nathan stood alone near the back of the SUV. His knuckles were scraped, his shirt torn, but his eyes were calm. Carter approached. "We got all of them. Federal custody, Donovan included." Nathan nodded. "Good." He looked over at Simone, now holding Jordan in a tight embrace, tears in her eyes but her spine unbroken. For the first time since this began, Nathan exhaled. The battlefield was quiet. But the war wasn't over yet. 3 months later, the federal courthouse in Raleigh was packed. Camera crews lined the sidewalk. Protesters, community advocates, retired officers, and families of victims stood side by side, some holding signs, others holding silence. Inside courtroom 3C, every seat was filled. A palpable tension clung to the walls, as if the building itself was holding its breath. At the defense table sat Deputy Raymond Tate and Officer Luke Brenner, both stripped of their badges, wearing gray suits and faces drained of the arrogance they once wore like armor. Their lawyers murmured, shuffling paperwork, but no one looked confident. Sheriff Walter Briggs would never see the inside of this courtroom. He had pled guilty to a dozen federal charges days earlier in a quiet backroom deal in exchange for cooperation and to avoid a high-profile trial that might have collapsed his entire network. Now it was his enforcer's turn. And in the front row, Dr. Simone Hayes sat tall in a navy blazer, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Jordan, seated beside her in a pressed shirt and clip-on tie, reached for her hand. She squeezed gently. Neither of them said a word, but their presence said everything. The prosecution opened with clarity. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Langley began, this case is not about a single arrest or even a single department. It is about the systematic abuse of power weaponized against the very citizens it claimed to serve. Over the next week, the courtroom heard testimonies that peeled back the layers of Ravenwood's rot. Black men and women took the stand to recount stops that turned into charges, traffic violations that ended in jail time, and evidence that seemed to appear only after they protested their innocence. But nothing hit harder than Simone's testimony. She stood under oath, calm and composed, as she told the jury what had happened that night. The humiliation, the planted drugs, the loss of her son, the suffocating fear of being swallowed by a system that never saw her as human. "I am a doctor," she said. "I save lives. But that night, all my credentials, all my education, all my service, none of it mattered. What mattered was the color of my skin and the badge on theirs." Her voice never cracked. Her resolve never wavered. When she stepped down, the courtroom was still. Even the defense didn't dare challenge what she had said. But the real fracture came when Officer Luke Brenner flipped. On day 9 of the trial, he took the stand as a cooperating witness, his deal secured just hours earlier. Under oath, he confirmed what the community had whispered for years. "Yes," he said, "we planted drugs. We doctored reports. We stopped black drivers for made-up reasons. And we did it because Sheriff Briggs told us to." The jury watched in stunned silence as Brenner detailed arrest quotas, dropped bags of narcotics kept in squad cars, and problem people who were deliberately funneled through the system to fill numbers and quiet dissent. "And Simone Hayes?" Langley asked. "She was just the next one on the list." The verdict came swiftly. Guilty, on all counts. Both deputies were taken into custody immediately. No one in the gallery cheered. There were no standing ovations. Just quiet tears, silent embraces, and the profound stillness of justice finally being spoken and heard. Simone leaned toward Jordan, who whispered, "We won." "No," she said softly. "We told the truth, and the world finally listened." Spring came slowly to Ravenwood, but when it did, it bloomed like it had something to prove. The newly renovated Jefferson Community Hall, once a forgotten municipal building, now stood as the beating heart of something new. A banner stretched across its entrance, printed in deep navy and gold. The Hayes Justice Initiative, for accountability, access, and hope. Inside, folding chairs lined the auditorium, and tables overflowed with pamphlets on civil rights, community legal aid, and police accountability reforms. Volunteers in matching shirts greeted guests, teachers, families, students, former detainees, and newly hired officers who had come not out of obligation, but out of belief. Dr. Simone Hayes stood backstage, looking out at the crowd. It had been 6 months since the verdict. 6 months since Ravenwood's courtrooms echoed with truth instead of silence. 6 months since she had watched 2 men who once held unchecked power be led away in shackles. And now, she stood ready to build something lasting from the ashes. Next to her, Jordan straightened his tie, taller now, his eyes clearer. He didn't flinch when someone in uniform walked by. He didn't shrink in the presence of power, because he had seen what real power looked like, and it looked like his mother. The crowd quieted as Chief Anika Reynolds took the podium. Dressed in crisp uniform blues with a Ravenwood badge gleaming on her chest, she was the first black police chief in the county's history and the first to win public support without needing to ask for it. "Change doesn't happen in silence," she said. "It happens in uncomfortable conversations, in difficult admissions, and in real action. And that's what this moment is." She turned toward Simone with a nod of respect. "You didn't just demand justice, you redefined it." Applause rose slowly at first, then grew genuine, reverent. Simone took the stage, not as a victim, not even as a survivor, but as an architect of reform. "In Ravenwood," she began, "we've learned the hard way that justice can't be assumed. It has to be built intentionally, boldly, and together." She spoke of the Hayes Justice Initiative, its mission to offer free legal aid, policy advocacy, and civilian oversight support. She introduced lawyers, social workers, and formerly incarcerated citizens who had joined the board. She laid out a roadmap: data transparency, officer retraining, and early intervention systems. "But this isn't just about policy," she said. "It's about people, and about ensuring that the next time a mother is pulled over, she isn't afraid she won't make it home." When she stepped off the stage, she was met by Colonel Nathan Hayes, now in civilian clothes, his posture still military, but his role different. He had extended his leave. Now he served as Director of Security and Accountability for the Foundation, quietly using his skills not for war, but for protection and prevention. "I thought I was finished serving," he told her once. Turns out this was the mission that mattered most. As the event wound down, Jordan mingled with local high schoolers, talking about launching a student-led task force on justice education. Simone watched him, a quiet smile forming. This was what legacy looked like, not just survival, but empowerment. Outside, the sun caught the edge of the new plaque installed beside the hall's entrance. It read, "In honor of those who were silenced and those who spoke anyway." Ravenwood was no longer just a place known for what it covered up. It was becoming a place known for what it refused to ignore. And as Simone stood beneath the sunlight, beside her brother, her son, and a room full of people committed to something better, she knew. They hadn't just survived injustice. They'd rewritten its ending. In a broken system, silence protects the abusers. But when one woman refused to disappear, she forced the system to speak. Dr. Simone Hayes didn't raise her voice to be heard. She stood firm, endured the weight of injustice, and let her truth reshape an entire county. From a holding cell to a courtroom, from a courtroom to a foundation. She proved that true justice isn't just about punishment. It's about accountability, rebuilding, and protecting those who never had a voice to begin with. Because in places like Ravenwood and far beyond it, justice doesn't begin in the courtroom. It begins with someone saying, "This isn't right," and refusing to be told otherwise. If this story moved you, tell us what part hit you hardest and where in the world you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful narratives that challenge the systems and uplift the people.